culture aspect, I use Dr. Pertinga's research from Tilburg University. The definition of culture is actually very simple. Despite years and years and years of research, studies, surveys, and biological tests, culture is largely a set of behaviors exhibited within an individual or group of people. It has nothing to do, it is separate from race. So that means that somebody, for example, culture, somebody who on the outside may appear Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian can exhibit what other people view as behaviors of an African American. Whatever those are, and that's an entirely different subject all by itself, but there are people, it's good to know the difference between race and culture, basically. Now, the next topic of identity that I'm going to talk about is sexuality. This is based on research. Now, the research that I have on that is based on Dr. Rich Savin Williams, who's the professor of developmental psychology at Cornell University. Sexuality is a spectrum. Seriously, it's a spectrum. There may not be one specific set definition of how people identify who it is that they choose to either sexually or romantically interact with. To draw an example of this, I'm just going to use a straight line, honestly. In the middle, we'll have bisexual, and on the two ends, we'll have homosexual and heterosexual. For a lot of people, around 80%, they fall into one of these three categories. But for some people, it's a little bit more fluid. So the scientific terms for some of these, like let's say, for example, that I'm a guy, I'm homosexual, but if there's the right girl at the right time with the right personality traits, I might be willing to romantically interact with them. The scientific term for that is called homoflexible. And some students may identify as that. Yeah, I know this. I mean, I know it's a crazy term, but it's a spectrum, and it may seem hard to believe, but I mean, for a lot of people, like this is the truth for people. It's a spectrum. It truly is a spectrum, and there are a lot of factors that, with all three of these that we've listed so far, with all three of these, there are a lot of social and environmental factors that prevent people from telling what it is they truly are, or what it is they truly identify and connect with the strongest. Sort of to go back to this, if you're heterosexual, let's say that I was a straight male, but it was the right guy, right time, whatever, then that would be called heteroflexible. And there are even more classifications that don't even have to deal with the construct of gender. So there are people that are what's known as asexual, so they have no sexual attraction. They can have romantic, and it's hard. Like I said, it's hard to believe, and I've actually met someone like that, and it's hard. I mean, so I think, so to explain this, actually, I think it's good that we separate sex from romance.
Yeah.
You can be romantically involved with someone and not be sexually involved with them. Other way around also. You can be sexually involved with somebody and not really be romantically involved with them.
Yes.
It's good to separate the two. Romance is sort of the emotional involvement with someone else. Like you plan to long-term have a sustainable and stable relationship with someone based on whatever relationship, looks, whatever it is that you pick your people for. Sex is just what it is, sex. That's it and nothing more for the most part. It can develop just as the other way around it can develop. And there are also individuals known as pansexuals, where gender is not a factor in attraction. Now, a lot of people get pansexual and bisexual mixed up, because if gender's not a factor, then that means you'll date either a boy or a girl. That gets into the difference between sex and gender. were male and female. So if somebody identifies as what is called agender, which means that they don't identify with a specific gender, not a specific born assigned sex, but a specific gender. And a gender is the social constructs that come with being either male, female, or whatever it is that you choose.
So basically feminine or masculine.
Exactly, like femininity and masculinity. That is gender, and some people are agender, so they don't choose to identify with what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. And a person who is pansexual also has the possibility to have romantic and sexual attraction to people like that. And that leads us perfectly into our next one, which is gender. So this research is based on Catherine Wu from Harvard University. For some people, this can be a confusing aspect because of the anatomical differences between individuals born with an X chromosome and individuals born with a Y chromosome. So that's basically a nice way of me framing males versus females, but I'm not framing it as males versus females because of the agender aspect. So I'm pretty sure you all have been through anatomy. Males have one Y chromosome and one X chromosome, and females, of course, just have two X chromosomes. And that leads to one or the other's either ability or inability to reproduce. Gender should be distinctly separated by sex. Gender are the societal expectations of what is defined as being either male or female, while sex looks to identify your anatomical structure. That's the anatomy of a person. Both, however, despite how rare it may be, are spectrums. Genders are spectrums and sex are spectrums. For researched examples of sex being spectrums, some people are born with two X chromosomes and one Y chromosome, which does affect the biology. I'm sure you've seen those famous stories on ABC News and things of that nature, how some individuals may have, sorry to use these terms, but a vagina, but inside of the vagina is actually remnants of what would be deemed as a penis. So you have literally both anatomical structures within you. How do you define a person?
What is it? Is that a hermaphrodite or something?
Yes. So how do you identify people like that? And like I said, I'm not sure if at Harcum there are individuals who may identify or associate with individuals like that. But in the event, in the future, if this upcoming semester, if in the past, and for the future, therefore on, you meet people like that, it's important that when you interact with them, that you distinct between the human aspects of them and their identity aspects, to try not to put any prejudice or forthcoming beliefs onto these people. And prejudice can take form in many different ways. Some that's very innocent. I'll use Maria's example. Like, I don't think she meant any malice when she questioned the ethnic background of Y. But that can be, and of course we all know Y is a strong person, but for some people they take offense to that. For any of these categories that we listed, one big thing is sexuality. For whatever reason, religious, political, whatever you want to name, some people are not comfortable, even if they do identify with a certain sexuality, with a certain gender within that might not be what they were born or assigned with, they don't choose to share it because of societal factors, societal influences. And it's important that in the residential life and staff environment that we create a culture that's welcoming of all humans, of all people. So that, because we all have a spot here. We all have different races, cultures, sexualities, and genders, even amongst our own RA staff and pro staff. So you can imagine in the student body, what's revealed and what is not revealed. And it's important that we include all of us in this environment because we all have to live and work with each other. A growing practice amongst culture and a topic of research has been the philosophy of what I mentioned earlier, transgenderism. Persons who identify as transgender which is the T in many of the queer community acronyms, LGBT, LGBTQIA, are those who identify, and we're going back to that word identity and identify, those who identify with a gender that differs from their assigned sex. To put an example how this could go into a rather potential harmful situation, you may see someone on the outside who has, for example, female features, but maybe a whatever the societal defined definition of a boy's face may be. If you approach that person and ask them, what are you? As if they have to be one or the other, as opposed to recognizing what it is specifically that they are, what they choose to identify with, that can be personally harmful. We have to make sure, like I said, that we remember the human aspects of people and not the identity aspects, because we all have a different identity. Now, transgenderism can or cannot correspond with the subset of transgender individuals who undergo sexual reassignment surgery, which is called transsexualism. That's different. And I know we've all seen, going back to ABC, we've all seen stories of people who've gone through the full change. There's been a lot of research, a lot of testing that's been done that's been able to change a lot of the biological components of people. May not be able to emulate perfectly what a male or a female may be capable of doing, but still, for the most part, the reassignment to confirm that. Now there are elements, we're going to talk about elements that influence these identities, and we already touched a little bit on that, starting with religion. And that's also an element of identity, religion. This research for religion is based on a research forum hosted by the Pew Research Center and headed by Dr. Eddie Cloud, who is a professor of religion and African American studies at Princeton University. Christian leaders, bless you, Christian leaders have written about homosexual male-to-male sexual activity since the first decade of Christianity. We have it recorded in history books pretty much everywhere. Female-to-female has not been explicitly recorded. In Judaic and Jewish prohibitions, such as Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13, address the issue of sex between two men. The latter verse, 20:13, says, "And if a man also lies with mankind, as with womankind, both of them have committed abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them." The prohibitions make no mention, again, of female-to-female contact. Another example is in Christian theology has been the account of the friendship between David and Jonathan in the books of Samuel. It's largely regarded as a relationship that was simply affectionate. However, other people can interpret it as a sexual nature. One of the Bible verses, 1 Samuel 18:1, says, "And it came to pass, when he made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul." Another one that can sort of blur the societal lines, definitive lines, was Samuel 1:26, where David says, "I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing even the love of a woman," saying that his love for him passed even the love of which a woman could give him. Now, the noted Judaic excerpts have largely been used as a defense of the immorality of homosexual behavior. Immorality basically just means that it's sinful, that it's bad to be homosexual, or whatever the defined meaning of those is. Funny enough about that, though, is that's a Jewish passage, a Jewish interpretation of the Bible. A November survey from Nashville-based Lifeway Research found that 37% of Americans polled yes when asked about this excerpt if homosexual behavior is a sin. 37% of Americans believe that. The funny thing about that statistic is only 1.8% of the U.S. adult population is Jewish. So it means there's a lot of ignorance going on there. a lot of people are identifying with a text that they don't even identify with. So there's a lot of confusion, murkiness there. So people don't even know what it is that they do or don't want, or do or don't believe in. There are also, the final one is political or agenda for the sake of everything that you align with, agenda setting aspects of it. This is a separate element. The definition of politics is the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. So basically, all politics or agenda setting is using everything that's a part of your identity to justify legislation, executive power, or judicial power. So basically, it's defending why it is what you are is right. That's why religion, in many cases, is brought into the political background, why it was one of the main defenses on the Supreme Court of legalizing homosexual marriage. But there's a separation, obviously, between religion and state, which is why it was voided. But just to use the example, that some people utilize their identity to try to invalidate somebody else's identity.